sugar itself is such an epidemic because, this is just my feelings, but in a natural environment, there's nothing like a dog, a cat, a fucking paleo guy. Like you give them sugar and there's going to be a reaction and they're going to go after more. And it's going to repeat itself. And the reason it's going to repeat itself is because the repercussions of what happens with that, with sugar, are typically a long-term thing, meaning it doesn't show up immediately. Yet the reaction to it is immediate. So the positive, like, oh, I feel so good. This is awesome. It tastes amazing. But there's no real downside other than the fall off where it's like, oh, I'm out of energy now, right? But we're not, I don't think there's anything that exists that really, that's enough to stave us off from avoiding it that's where kind of consciousness has to come into this whole thing, where it's like down the road, you've got to be able to see how it's affected you. I mean, I would get hypoglycemic doing when I was training for a lot of endurance stuff back in the day, because I was using the Endurox, the Accelerades, which were a 4-to-1 carb to protein ratio. And I'm not trying to take apart these companies because they actually made great products for the times and where they were at. But the fact of the matter is it was sugar with a little bit of protein. And they were just, this is all we knew. This is all we did. And it was like, hey, at whatever cost. And most of the products still out there within the endurance world are sugar factories, regardless if they're calling it dextrose, whether it's just straight up glucose, or it's maltodextrin, or it's fructose, or it's whatever. It's sugar. And you can get an immediate reaction. You can get fueling off of it, but you're going to have to continue that cycle if you don't want to bottom out. And that's where the sales, that's where the business comes into it. Oh, wait a second. I mean, I've got something that's like, fuck. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the whole Pablo Escobar thing. It was like, hey, we got a product here that I swear to God, everybody is going to want like this. That's right. Oh, that was sugar. And guess how cheap sugar is? Whoa, here we go. So there's the business play. And it's not that, hey, I understand business, but I also understand being ethical. Yep. And a lot of that gets divided once money starts to get made in the amounts that it's being made. And sure. And when you're funding studies from a company that largely puts out sugar water and carbonated sugar water, and is on the board or donates money to a lot of businesses that would inevitably probably never advocate sugar, you're starting to see a pattern where they're starting to try and fill in gaps and things because they know they've got something that's contributing to a massive epidemic. Yep. That epidemic being either obesity, metabolic syndrome, whatever you want to call it, diabetes, the list goes on and on and on. Even cancers, man, they thrive off of, fermented glucose. So things that have literally been broken down from sugar, they can accelerate. Yep. So, and there's much more to that. And I'm not, I'm just speaking, briefly on that. I'm not an expert on any of it, other than the fact that I do understand that when we have, as an animal or as a being, the long-term things happen with us are very hard to look at, and it's only people who are wise enough to be able to look at long term that are really able to see the repercussions of this stuff. And most of us, unfortunately, are being fed from a machine that is just like, hey, now it's in my hands, I can get it, I can do this. Yeah. And it's like, well, hey, yeah, I get it, technology is great, all this is great, but if you need to be able to look at things from a long term perspective, I think, and that's why we have the problem we have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Looking at your news sources is pretty important. And, I saw something that was pretty awesome, because there's like these wars that go on that we see that, like my parents are highly conservative, and I don't think there's anything wrong with being conservative, nor do I think there's anything wrong with being like a liberal. But The fact of the matter is there's a right wing and a left wing, and I saw this thing, and it's this Native American guy sitting there, and it says, "What if I told you the left wing and the right wing belong to the same bird?"
That's right.
And unfortunately, our news outlets are not what they used to be. You
Mm-hmm.
know, our information pieces are not what they used to be. So we've got these rogue people who are investigative journalists and people who are doing this stuff who are not on most mainstream channels.
Yep.
And so, you know, most of my information comes off of things like Twitter or social media, and people who I've learned to follow that are actively pursuing the truth,
Yep.
regardless of what that truth is. And that just so happens to be the same people almost in every single area that we exist in, the ether that we all exist in, which is either, you know, hey, we're training, or we're CrossFitters, or we're runners, or we're scientists, or we're a doctor or whatever. When you have these people, they all start to gravitate towards the same area, and you start to get a lot of the same information, and they exist in the same circles.
Yep.
I mean, dude, this a gal by the name of Dr. Ann Childers put something out yesterday, and I like literally she tweeted this thing, and she's a psychiatrist, I believe. And she's into eating, like, you know, mostly basically on the paleo line. She's in our world. She's chasing things. She sees a connection with depression, with a lot of this stuff, and diet. And she put out Coca-Cola partners include American College of Cardiology and American Academy of Pediatrics. Weird.
Yeah, super.
And so I retweeted that and put odd. And then she was like, well, what do you mean by that? And I'm like, what do you think I mean by that? I'm like, that's about the sketchiest type of business that exists.
Yep.
That is sketchy. That is wrong. There's something going on. Somebody needs to look into that.
Yep.
And you just can't. And I don't think like a government needs to get involved. I just think people need to be aware and go, hey, why are they doing that?
Yep.
Like what's the point of that? Like those
agenda.
shouldn't exist.
Yep.
You know, and that's something weird. And I think CrossFit's doing a pretty good job. You know, there's ways I would probably go about it differently, but I'm not Greg and I'm not CrossFit, but I do work with inside that world, and I agree with most and largely agree with all the points they're making about this stuff. Is let's just call a spade and let's call it out.
It's fun. It's interesting that, I mean, CrossFit's probably the biggest name in fitness to really go after sugary product sets. Like, I've never seen a company or like a movement
because
that was in fitness to go after them.
they're really unviable, and you know that's why there's such a, regardless if you agree with them or not. Mm-hmm. The fact of the matter is they ain't gonna take money from a company like that. Now, do they take money from other companies that we wouldn't disagree with? Sure, they sponsor events and do things like that, but they're not being sponsored by anybody.
Yep.
Like, other than the deal they made with Reebok, but that deal didn't encompass them promoting Reebok.
Yep.
That deal didn't encompass them posting it on their page or taking money from them. And they've gone back against Reebok a couple times when they felt like they stepped over the line.
Yep.
And they did it publicly. And they're willing to risk, and risk is a part of success. And I think largely most of the fitness world doesn't do it is because they've been taking dollars from anybody they can get dollars from, including things like Gatorade, which is crap.
Yep.
It is what it is. It's sugar water with salt in it.
Yep.
And yeah, it works for hydration very quickly, but it also jacks up your insulin and drops it out, and your blood sugar follows the insulin ride, and that's not a good thing. And your hydration, the whole hydration thing with it is off as well, because you're going to have to drink more Gatorade in order to shuttle the hydration, which is, weird, especially if you're not on a diet that's high in sugar. You don't need as much fluid in you.
Yep.
Weird.
Yep. Last question.
Just the carbohydrate content and how many sugars are in there. and then look at like fiber content as well. That way, and then it's like, okay, if there's like, let's just hypothetically, it's like, oh, 20 grams of sugar or 20 grams of carbohydrates, and there's only like two grams of sugar. Well, what the hell are the ingredients? And then if it's like stuff you can't really pronounce, you're like, that's a red flag itself.
Yep.
Okay, because not only do you have a tad a bit of sugar, but you've probably got some chemically engineered shit in there that you really don't want to be. You wouldn't put in your body. And what's the meaning of a supplement anyway? A supplement is there to get you what you're missing. Are you missing sugar? Are you missing chemically modified products that are supposed to taste like sugar?
Sure.
Oh, so what's the point of why are you taking this? And if it's like, oh, well, I need my pre-workout jack up to get working out. Well, you probably need to rethink when you're working out, how you're working out, and why you're working out if you need to get jacked up to go work out.
That's
like
right.
that should just be a very simple process to like, hey, I'm amped. I want to go work out, or I want to do something. I'm going to go do it.
Yep.
There's a big difference there.